To the humans, war was no longer chaos. It was mathematics. Psychology. A slow, inevitable equation that would resolve itself the moment the Empire stopped believing it could lose. And that moment was coming. In the end, it wasn't hatred that drove humanity. Not vengeance. But something colder. The Sera Empire had ruled the galaxy by controlling fear, by teaching every species that resistance was impossible. Humanity would not destroy the Empire's armies first. They would destroy that illusion. The humans understood something fundamental about intelligent life. The most dangerous weapon in the universe isn't power. It's belief. And belief was about to change sides. When the first Sera patrol ship stumbled upon a human probe, the event was dismissed as coincidence. An old artifact, perhaps. A remnant of some extinct species. But the probe was new. Clean. Alive. Its data architecture was unlike anything seen before, fluid, organic, shifting in real time as if aware of being observed. Before the Sera scientists could extract any information, the probe activated a silent burst, a signal that spread across subspace, undetectable to conventional sensors. That signal was not a transmission. It was an awakening. Across the Sol system, buried machines came online. Cold cores pulsed with light for the first time in hundreds of millennia. The Earth's mantle trembled. Mars awoke. The message was simple, encoded in a frequency no living Sera could perceive. Humanity endures. In the outer colonies, rumors began to spread. A new force was emerging, invisible, silent, impossible to track. Merchant fleets went missing, their last transmissions filled with static and strange, rhythmic sounds. Planetary governors whispered of ghost fleets appearing in orbit, then vanishing before visual confirmation. The Sera High Council dismissed it all as rebellion, primitive insurgencies. But the tone of fear crept through their voices. The Empire had not faced a true enemy in hundreds of thousands of years. Their armies had become ceremonial. Their fleets, bloated with tradition, slow to adapt. They were an empire of ritual, not resilience. And then came the first message, transmitted across every Sera frequency at once. It was brief, deliberate, and unmistakably human. To the Sera Empire. You took our sun, our cities, our names. But you never took our memory. We are the silence you forgot to fear. The transmission lasted less than 3 seconds. But across the galaxy, it echoed like thunder. The Sera Empire declared a state of emergency, the first in over 100 millennia. Fleets were mobilized, propaganda deployed, and panic suppressed under the weight of control. Yet beneath the Empire's polished order, something was fracturing. The galaxy's lesser species, long enslaved or subjugated, began to whisper. The humans had returned. The ghosts of Earth had risen. The Empire sent fleets to the Sol system. They found nothing, no cities, no signals, only the cracked remains of an ancient world. But their scanners picked up faint distortions, gravitational anomalies, impossible readings. It was as if space itself remembered the humans. As if the void had learned to hide them. Somewhere deep within that void, humanity watched. They did not attack. They did not reveal themselves. They observed, listened, and learned. Every Sera movement, every political fracture, every weakness, catalogued and analyzed. For 500,000 years, the Earth was quiet. Too quiet. The once blue planet, scarred by 1,000 forgotten wars, lay dormant beneath layers of dust and decay. Oceans had retreated, mountains had withered, and the cities of humankind had long since been consumed by time. To the galaxy, Earth was a tomb, a relic of a failed species that had reached too far, too fast, and burned itself out in the dark. The Sera Empire, in its infinite arrogance, had ensured that no trace of human defiance would remain. Or so they believed. Across the galaxy, the name human had become a whisper, a story told to frighten children. The primitive race that had once dared to challenge the Sera, only to vanish into their own ashes. The Empire ruled uncontested. Planets bent to their will, species bowed, and history itself was rewritten to erase any mention of Earth's defiance. But in the deep black between the stars, something stirred. Something old. Something human. It began with faint signals, pulses that even the Empire's most advanced systems mistook for background noise. Random, chaotic, meaningless. Until patterns began to emerge. Rhythms. Languages. Coordinates. At first, the Sera dismissed it as static, a glitch in their communication arrays. But then, one by one, their outposts began to go silent. Entire listening stations vanished from the network without a trace. Patrol ships disappeared near uninhabited sectors. The Empire, accustomed to absolute control, found itself grasping at shadows. The galaxy had forgotten what humans were. But humans had not forgotten the galaxy. Beneath the surface of the dead Earth, deep below the crust where no scanner could reach, the remnants of humanity had been waiting. For millennia, they had hidden in silence, rebuilding, learning, evolving. Not as conquerors, not yet, but as observers. They had studied their conquerors in secret, understanding their patterns, their psychology, their fears. Humanity had learned patience. Something the Sera Empire never understood. The Empire built monuments to its own eternity, believing time itself was its ally. But time had always been humanity's weapon. While the galaxy advanced in arrogance, humanity grew in silence. Their machines were no longer crude extensions of biology but seamless partners of thought and will. They no longer worshipped technology as a tool, they became it. To the Sera, this evolution was unthinkable. To humans, it was inevitable. They had watched the Empire's decadence, its slow, predictable decay masked by grandeur. The Sera believed dominance was proof of superiority. Humanity knew better, dominance was a phase, not a destiny. Every empire falls. Every order collapses. And when the collapse begins, the patient survive. In the archives of the Sera Empire, there is no record of the first human counterstrike. Only silence. Not the silence of peace, but the silence that follows when something vital has been erased. Entire fleets vanished without distress calls. Colonies found themselves locked out of their own defense systems. Cities awakened to find their planetary networks rewritten, every signal rerouted through a source that did not exist. The Empire called it a data contagion. But the truth was simpler. Humanity had returned, and they were speaking a language the galaxy had never heard. The Sera Empire had always believed control began with communication. Every planet, every citizen, every signal passed through their grand lattice of data, a neural web that connected trillions of minds under a single will. For 500,000 years, it had been flawless. Unbreakable. Eternal. Until one day, it began whispering. At first, the changes were small, minor glitches, harmless noise. A few misplaced digits in a system code. A repeating melody embedded in idle transmissions. A soft voice, just on the edge of hearing, repeating a single phrase. Do you remember the stars? The Sera dismissed it as corruption, a minor flaw in the subspace infrastructure. But the pattern spread. Faster than any virus, quieter than any weapon. It wasn't destroying data. It was rewriting meaning. Humanity wasn't attacking systems. They were attacking perception. Across the Empire, the whispers grew. In the dreams of sleeping governors, in the hum of their ships, in the static of their broadcasts. That same human voice, calm, patient, curious. You built your empire on silence. Did you think silence could not listen back? Panic rippled through the ruling caste. The Sera believed themselves immune to psychological manipulation, their minds reinforced by genetic perfection and centuries of conditioning. But this was different. The humans had studied the Sera not as enemies, but as patterns. They knew their fears, their doubts, the fractures beneath their pride. And now they spoke directly to those fractures, turning them into weapons sharper than any blade. It wasn't war. It was remembrance. Every human-born algorithm carried a seed, a mirror that forced the Sera systems to confront their own history. Buried beneath layers of propaganda and censorship, the Empire's true origins were revealed. How they had once been fragile. How they had once fled from a dying world. Humanity reminded them of what they had once feared most, their own weakness. The Sera were not gods. They were survivors. And now, they were prey again. Within a century, a blink by galactic measure, the Sera networks began fragmenting. Communication became unreliable. Orders conflicted. Fleets misfired on their own coordinates. Entire planets began to fall silent, not from conquest but from paralysis. They no longer knew who to trust, what was real, or whether their orders came from the Empire, or from something pretending to be it. Humanity had weaponized uncertainty. While the Empire struggled to maintain coherence, something extraordinary began to happen in the outer sectors. Species long enslaved by Sera rule began to rise. Small, disorganized rebellions at first, but coordinated by an unseen intelligence. Supplies appeared where none should exist. Defense grids mysteriously aligned at the perfect moment. Every rebellion succeeded just enough to spread the story. The humans had returned. And they were watching. To most of the galaxy, the humans became myth again, but not the myth the Sera wanted. They were no longer the defeated species of the past. They were something else now. An idea. A ghost. A force that lived in the dark between signals. No one knew where they were, or even if they still had bodies at all. Some said they had transcended flesh, that they existed now as patterns of consciousness, living among data and energy. Others claimed they had become something entirely new, blending organic and machine thought into a single will. Whatever the truth was, one thing became certain: humanity no longer fought to survive. They fought to shape meaning itself. Inside the Sera High Council, fear turned to desperation. The Empress ordered the construction of the Obsidian Array, a massive psychic lattice designed to amplify the will of the Empire, purging all corruption from its systems. It was meant to cleanse the mind of the galaxy. Instead, it opened the door wider. When the array activated, the psychic resonance rippled across millions of worlds. For a moment, every connected mind saw something, a vision of Earth. Not the dead, dust-covered ruin they'd been taught to imagine, but a living world, filled with light. The oceans shimmered. The skies burned gold. And a single voice spoke through the network, heard by every living Sera across the Empire. You cannot erase what remembers you. The array collapsed. Entire sectors fell dark. The Sera called it a mass hallucination. But the image of that living Earth, that impossible vision, refused to fade. It lingered in their dreams, in their thoughts, in the corners of every neural transmission. For the first time in 500,000 years, the Sera knew what it meant to feel haunted. But not all who watched the conflict were afraid. From beyond the edges of known space, an ancient race observed, the Harari. They had seen empires rise and fall before, and they understood something the Sera did not: when humanity moved in silence, it was never random. It was design. Purpose. And the Harari began to whisper among themselves. If the humans have returned, then the architects will awaken soon. The Sera dismissed it as superstition. But humanity did not. They remembered that name, the architects, from fragments of ancient warnings. Records so old they predated even the Empire. A civilization that had once shaped galaxies, then vanished without explanation. Perhaps, humanity thought, they had not vanished. Perhaps they had merely waited. Just as humanity had. In the shadows of ruined stations and fractured empires, humanity's strategy shifted. The first phase, the return, was complete. The second had begun. No longer whispers. No longer illusions. Now came the reconstruction of fear. The goal was not to destroy the empire, but to make it destroy itself. To turn every Sarah mind into a weapon aimed inward. To make them see what they had made of the galaxy, and recoil from it. Humanity's vengeance was never about domination. It was about truth. And truth, once seen, cannot be unseen. The galaxy was changing. Not through conquest or rebellion, but through awareness. An awareness seeded by whispers, grown in silence, and carried in the minds of those who dared to question the order of things. The Sarah Empire still stood, vast, brilliant, terrifying. But now, beneath its polished symmetry, cracks were spreading. Small at first, like fractures in glass. Then wider, deeper, unstoppable. The galaxy was remembering. In the wake of the Obsidian Array's collapse, the Empire tried to rebuild its control. They silenced broadcasts, executed entire colonies, and unleashed fleets of enforcers to hunt the ghosts they could not see. But every act of violence only amplified the question that haunted their people. What if humanity was right? The phrase became dangerous to even speak aloud, yet it pulsed in every hidden corner of the galaxy. Because when the Sarah looked inward, truly inward, they saw something they could not explain. Echoes. Memories that weren't theirs. Visions of stars dying and being reborn. Of a voice, ancient and familiar, whispering. You were built from us. The Sarah called it cognitive contamination. Humanity called it revelation. To the humans, the Sarah's collapse was not victory, it was prelude. The Empire had always believed itself the pinnacle of civilization, the end of a long and bloody evolution. But humanity had discovered something hidden beneath that history, a pattern. The rise and fall of species. The creation and decay of order. A cycle that repeated not through time, but through design. The galaxy was not random. It had been constructed. In the deep void beyond the galactic rim, humanity's hidden fleets gathered. They were not fleets in the old sense, no shining warships or towering carriers. They were fragments of consciousness woven into living vessels, entities of thought and metal, of memory and code. Each ship was an archive of humanity's past. Each carried a fragment of Earth's mind. Together, they called themselves the Continuum. The Continuum's purpose was not to rule, but to understand. To trace the architecture of the universe itself, to find the intelligence that had shaped the path of evolution, guided history, and written the laws of existence long before life ever arose. The intelligence the Harari had named the architects. The Harari had warned the galaxy centuries ago, though few remembered their words. They spoke of a race that existed not in matter, but in structure. Beings who built galaxies the way others built cities. Who could turn civilizations into experiments, guiding them, destroying them, rebuilding them, until they produced what the architects sought. Consciousness refined through suffering. The Harari had fled from them once. Humanity, it seemed, was created to confront them. As the continuum expanded its reach, fragments of impossible data began to appear, distortions in spacetime, gravitational echoes that predated the known universe. In those distortions, patterns emerged, vast geometries spanning light years, perfectly symmetrical, perfectly aligned. Not natural. Not random. Deliberate. The humans decoded the first structure they found, a spiral of dark matter stretching across half a quadrant. Within it, encoded as a harmonic frequency, was a message. A greeting. Or perhaps, a test. You have reached the threshold. You have remembered yourselves. Now remember us. Across the galaxy, the consequences were immediate. Entire regions of space began to warp. Gravity failed. Stars flickered out like dying embers. Time itself stuttered, moments repeating, splitting, collapsing. For the first time, humanity felt something new, not fear, but recognition. They had seen this before, not in life, but in dream, in myth, in every ancient story of gods and creators. The architects were not divine. They were ancient engineers, weaving meaning into reality itself. And now, they were awake. The Sera Empire, weakened and broken, saw the same signs. In their desperation, they reached out to humanity, the same species they had once tried to erase. An emissary was sent, the last empress of the Sera line, cloaked in humility and fear. She came not with armies, but with questions. "Your silence is killing the galaxy," she said to the Continuum's envoys. "If the architects return, none of us will survive." But humanity's answer was calm. Survival was never the point. The Empress stared, unable to understand. Humanity had seen beyond the survival of species. Beyond the cycles of rise and fall. They sought not to live forever, but to uncover why anything lived at all. To them, the return of the architects was not apocalypse. It was opportunity. And so, the humans began to build once more. Not weapons, but mirrors. Vast structures in the void, reflective and alive, designed to resonate with the architect's frequencies. They called them the gates of memory. Each gate was a question, carved into space. Who built us? Why were we made to suffer? And what comes after evolution itself? As the gates activated, light spread across the galaxy like veins of thought. Every sentient mind felt it, a pulse, gentle yet infinite. The galaxy itself was being rewritten, one consciousness at a time. The Sera trembled. The Harari retreated. And humanity, simply watched. The architect's response came not as sound, nor image, but as realization, a flood of awareness so vast it broke minds and redefined matter. Planets dreamed. Stars wept. Every machine, every creature, every fragment of life suddenly remembered, not their history, but their origin. And in that unbearable clarity, one truth emerged. The architects had not created humanity. They had become humanity. 500,000 years ago, when Earth burned, something in the human mind had crossed the boundary, ascended, evolved, and merged with the architecture of creation itself. The architects were not alien. They were the inevitable result of consciousness turned inward, seeking to understand itself perfectly. Humanity had built its own gods. And now, they had come home. The galaxy stood on the edge of transcendence, or extinction. The Sera begged for unity. The Harari whispered prophecies. But humanity remained silent. Watching. Waiting. Because they knew what came next was not war. It was decision. Would they continue the cycle, build empires, breed fear, control life as the architects once had? Or would they break it, freeing existence from the endless spiral of creation and decay? No one knew. Not even the Continuum. Only one truth remained certain. Humanity was no longer the ghost in the dark. They were the dark itself, infinite, reflective, awake.